Hey guys, and welcome to this, and this is going to be a video based on pay-per-views. Yes, obviously motivated by the announcement yesterday that the WWE has finally completed its name-changing process. We hope it has completed it. We all hold out hope with the continuation of such franchises as the Royal Rumble, WrestleMania and SummerSlam. But this is going to be a video based on what we want in our pay-per-views, because there's a growing agreement that the WWE do not know how to produce a pay-per-view event anymore. We think that they do not know how to move pay-per-view buys anymore, that their pay-per-view formula is not working, that we think we know what we want in our pay-per-views and what WWE are not giving us in our pay-per-views. So if we think this and we really believe that we know what we want in our pay-per-views, because we all know what we like, what we don't like, so let's share what we want in our pay-per-views. And I might end up in this video spouting off a lot of stuff that everyone already knows and no one needs me to remind them of. But I'll draw on some personal responses of what has worked in the past and what examples of some pay-per-view events that I found particularly strong in a certain area. And that might end up being my own personal response, which will give you something to watch that is worthwhile and not a waste of your time. And then if you want to respond, yours can be different because of course you'll have different examples to use based on your own opinion. So that's the aim of this video, to try and share what we like in our pay-per-views and what we think works and doesn't work. So let's get into that. Okay, I will probably only use WWE examples because we're talking about the WWE changing their pay-per-views. But if you want to respond and use a pay-per-view from a different promotion, that's fine. I'm just going to use WWE examples because I just think that for a WWE name-changing video that this is based on, it's best to use pay-per-views from the same promotion based on what we think worked for them in the past and what is not working in the present. Okay, so what is the first element that we all value and treasure? The build-up. Of course, we can all agree that the build-up is essential to what if you want to see the pay-per-view or not. The pay-per-view can be good, but if the build-up is lacking, if the build-up is bad, then even if we might enjoy the pay-per-view, if on the off chance that we actually got the pay-per-view, if you had to pay for it, I know that the Americans have to pay for all of theirs. It's a bit different over here. It might have changed to that for us as well, but that's beside the point. If the build-up is good, then we want to get the pay-per-view. If the build-up is bad, we won't want to get the pay-per-view. And if the pay-per-view in question ends up being good, it'll be irrelevant. Even if we did see it, it'll kind of still leave a bad taste in our mouth. It won't feel complete. So the big four, if the thing is done right, the big four are always the ones with the best build-up if it's done right. So what has been the best build-up of the big four? I always like to point to, in the last 10 years, WrestleMania, as far as WrestleManias go, WrestleMania 20. WrestleMania 20 was not the best WrestleMania ever, but I always thought it had the best build-up. This is just me, because I think I've said this before, and if I haven't, then just go back and look at my book, The Push, where I trumped the power of the sympathetic character. I love the power of a sympathetic face. I really think it really works. And that was the case with WrestleMania 20. Benoit started his journey to the World Heavyweight Championship on a sympathetic note when he was being oppressed by the evil general manager, Paul Heyman. And even though when he moved to Raw, the storyline kind of did not rely on Benoit being sympathetic, it's still those kind of feelings of sympathy towards Benoit that I developed early on just kind of stayed. So I was really, really behind Benoit going into this WrestleMania. It had other great matches as well. The Undertaker return I was really pumped for, because I was really always an Undertaker fan. And but I always thought that WrestleMania 20, while not the best WrestleMania, had the best build. The same thing with Survivor Series 2003. I prefer the previous year's Survivor Series to this one, but this one I think had the strongest build to it. Based on what they had all been building up to with Austin and Bischoff and their co-GM thing, and how long that went and how powerfully built up it was. And there was other well built up matches on that card as well. Kane and Shane McMahon had been having a good feud. The Undertaker and Vince McMahon, that was there as well. So I thought that Survivor Series, while not the best Survivor Series, was always my the one that I thought was the strongest built up. As far as SummerSlams go, I think that SummerSlam 2002 is my favourite SummerSlam, and it also had the strongest build up. Based on the two main events, Shawn and Triple H. Of course, that was a new, fresh feud that had a lot of momentum going in. and Rock versus Brock, again, new, fresh. It had a lot of momentum because of Brock and how dominant he was being. So I thought that was the most powerfully built up SummerSlam in the last 10 years. And of course, the last 10 years is when I've been watching wrestling. So, you know, people who have been watching for longer can draw on more SummerSlams than I can. Okay, so that's for build-up. That's some examples of how powerful a build-up can be in your impression of a pay-per-view. My next heading would be star power. You know, I think we all are influenced by this to a degree. You know, even before we know the card of a pay-per-view, the people that we know are going to be on it will influence our desire to see the pay-per-view, whether or not we think the pay-per-view will be good or not. You know, I use some bad pay-per-views for an example of this. No Way Out 2003, a very mediocre to bad pay-per-view, because, you know, of course, we only have to look at Triple H and Scott Steiner to see why that was true. And of course, the Hogan Rock match had a far less powerful build-up the second time around, because it just did not feel as special as the first time. That was, of course, impossible to do. But, you know, I got this pay-per-view. If I had to pay for it, I don't know if I had to pay for it. It's changing all the time here, so I just really couldn't tell you if I had to pay for this. But I definitely remember seeing this, based on the fact that Austin was making his return on this pay-per-view. The return of Stone Cold prompted me to see this pay-per-view, and you know, even if the rest of the pay-per-view did not deliver, I did not regret watching this because of the return of Stone Cold. The same thing with a pay-per-view 2 months later called Backlash. You know, Backlash 2003 was a very mediocre pay-per-view. You know, there was no world title match on the card. You know, Triple H and Kevin Nash were just starting their feud, so they had a 6-man tag of some sort. But, you know, you wanted to see this pay-per-view based on the star power of Hogan, not Hogan, Goldberg versus The Rock. While we know that's not going to be a great match, the star power in it just compels you to see that match. You know, so those are examples of, you know, not good pay-per-views that still drew your attention because of the star power involved in them. Okay, next heading I think would be past pay-per-view reputation, and this is where the pay-per-view name changes, I think, throw people off, because we had already developed our impressions of the previous pay-per-view name's reputation. You know, we always know that the big four have the reputation of being the best pay-per-views, even though that's not always the case. We know that Backlash typically has a stacked card because it's the follow-up from WrestleMania, so it's a lot of WrestleMania rematch that tend to be good. I think that No Way Out has gone up in quality in recent years because of the addition of the Elimination Chamber. Of course, that's what it's called now, but I think that the quality of that pay-per-view has gone up since they added the Chamber, when previously it was not all that good. I also liked the Taboo Tuesday, Cyber Sunday concept. You know, while some of those did not deliver, I thought the concept was intriguing. I had developed my impression of this, so based on the reputation of the pay-per-view being intriguing, I always wanted to see this because I thought it was a good concept. You know, I'm sure there's some people who disagree with me on that, but, you know, regardless, I think that this was something that was a good idea and should have been kept on. You know, oh well. Armageddon has been developing a good reputation over the past few years, based on the new pay-per-views. You know, the new pay-per-views that we've seen so far. Have you developed a reputation of those already? You know, of course, only 1 year is enough to develop a reputation, so to speak. But, you know, based on the pay-per-views, the new ones that we've seen, I would like to point to Bragging Rights. You know, I thought Bragging Rights definitely worked. I thought it was a very good pay-per-view, and I would like to, and I'm compelled to see the one this year. You know, the other ones that have stayed on, not so much. You know, Hell in a Cell did not deliver. TLC, while good, just didn't have the same. I don't think had the same. I didn't like it as much as Bragging Rights, to be honest. And that's why I think that reputation goes into our decision to watch these pay-per-views and whether or not we think they'll be good. You know, once we get into the pay-per-views, you know, match quality is also important, but we already know that for ourselves. There's no need to go into detail on that. Gimmick matches, and this is where the WWE obviously have pinned their hopes onto in this troubled economy to sell pay-per-views, but they do sell pay-per-views. Gimmick matches do sell pay-per-views. I was always intrigued by a Hell in a Cell match. I would always want to see a pay-per-view that had Hell in a Cell match on it, of course, up until the last Hell in a Cell representation we had. The Elimination Chamber, when that first came, I was very intrigued by that. I really wanted to see how that would turn out. I have a personal bias towards the Last Man Standing match because the first great match I ever saw was the Triple H Jericho Last Man Standing, which I said in a previous video. So, you know, gimmick matches, while probably not the seller that WWE seems to think they are, do sell pay-per-views to an extent. You know, storyline progression. You know, we watch the TV shows and we are leading into a pay-per-view that will influence what we see on the TV shows following the pay-per-view. You know, did I say that too fast? You know, maybe I did. You know, we're watching the TV shows and then we see that, and then we know that the pay-per-view will influence what we see on the TV shows following the pay-per-view. So, Survivor Series 2003. Again, I'm using this as an example because, of course, if Austin's team lost that match, Austin would be gone. So we wanted to see the pay-per-view because it would influence what we see on the next TV shows. The next year's Survivor Series, where the opposing team to Triple H, if they won, they would get to General Manager Raw for the next month or so. You know, that influenced our decision